Lee Jun shifted uncomfortably in his chair as 30 pairs of alien eyes turned to stare at him. The classroom fell silent, except for the soft humming of the space station's life support systems. He was used to being the center of attention by now, but it still made his skin crawl. As you can see, Professor Veltar continued, pointing one of his 4 blue fingers at June, the human respiratory system is surprisingly primitive compared to most galactic species. They require constant oxygen intake and cannot hold their breath for more than a few minutes. June felt his cheeks burn red. 6 months into his exchange program at Galactic Academy, and he was still being used as a living example of how backward Earth was. The other students whispered among themselves in languages that sounded like clicks, whistles, and growls. Crix, the large reptilian student sitting 2 rows behind him, made a sound that June had learned was laughter among his people. No wonder. Humans die so easily, Crix hissed to his friends. They cannot even breathe underwater or in thin air like proper species. June clenched his fists, but said nothing. He had learned early in his stay that fighting back only made things worse. The other species saw humans as weak newcomers who had barely crawled out of their own solar system. Earth had only made contact with the galactic community 5 years ago, making humans the newest and least advanced members. Now, if we compare this to the Vespian respiratory system, Professor Veltar moved to another student, we can see a much more advanced design. Nala, the insect-like student with gossamer wings, buzzed happily as the professor explained how her people could extract oxygen from almost any atmosphere. Her large, compound eyes reflected the classroom lights like tiny mirrors. June looked out the massive viewport that made up one wall of the classroom. The stars stretched endlessly in all directions, with the orange glow of Proxima Centauri painting everything in warm light. 3 other space stations orbited nearby, each one home to thousands of students from across the galaxy. He still could not believe he was really here. When the Korean government had selected him for the exchange program, his family had thrown a celebration that lasted 3 days. He was the first person from his small town to ever leave Earth, let alone travel to another star system. But the reality had been much harder than the dream. Every day brought new reminders of how primitive his species was. The other students could do things that seemed impossible to human minds. Some could see colors that did not exist in human vision. Others could communicate through electrical fields or chemical scents. A few could even change their body temperature at will. Humans could do none of these things. They were just ordinary mammals from an ordinary planet that had gotten lucky enough to invent space travel before destroying themselves. June, Professor Veltar called, snapping him back to attention. Perhaps you could tell the class about human bone density. I understand it is quite low compared to most species. Before June could answer, the lights in the classroom flickered. A low vibration ran through the floor, making some of the smaller students grab their desks for support. The professor's blue skin turned a darker shade as he looked toward the ceiling. That is strange, he muttered. The station should not be experiencing any. The emergency alarm cut him off. A harsh wailing sound filled the classroom as red lights began flashing along the walls. The universal translator in June's ear crackled to life with an automated message. Alert, alert. Unknown vessels detected approaching the station. All students and faculty report to designated safety areas immediately. This is not a drill. Through the viewport, June saw something that made his heart stop. Dark shapes were materializing out of empty space, their hulls so black they seemed to absorb the starlight around them. The ships were massive, easily 10 times larger than the space station and covered in weapon arrays that glowed with deadly energy. Dominion forces, Professor Veltar whispered, his voice filled with terror. How did they get past the defense grid? Panic erupted in the classroom. Students jumped from their seats, some running for the door while others simply froze in fear. The Saurian students like Crix began making distressed hissing sounds, while the Vespians like Nala took flight, their wings beating frantically as they circled near the ceiling. June remained in his seat watching the enemy ships with growing dread. He had heard stories about the Dominion during his time at the Academy. They were conquerors who swept through space, enslaving entire worlds and harvesting their resources. Most species considered them the greatest threat to galactic peace. The first energy blast lit up the viewport like lightning. The space station shuddered as defensive shields flared to life, but June could see they would not hold for long. The Dominion ships were firing in coordinated patterns, each blast weakening the station's defenses. "Everyone to the escape pods," Professor Veltar shouted over the chaos. "Hurry, we do not have much time." Students pushed and shoved as they rushed toward the exit. June stood up slowly, his mind racing. Something about the attack pattern bothered him, but he could not figure out what. The Dominion ships were clearly powerful enough to destroy the station in seconds, so why were they taking their time? He looked closer at the energy blasts hitting the shields. They were not random. The attackers were targeting specific sections of the station, areas that June recognized from his technical manuals as life support and power distribution centers. They were not trying to destroy the station at all. They wanted it intact, which meant they wanted prisoners. "June!" Nala buzzed near his ear, her wings creating a high-pitched whine. "Why are you not running? We must reach the escape pods." June shook his head. "The pods will not work," he said quietly. "Look at where they are shooting. They want to disable the station, not destroy it. They will have ships waiting to capture anyone who tries to escape." Nala's compound eyes focused on the battle outside. After a moment, her buzzing grew more agitated. "You are right," she said. "The attack pattern is designed to trap us here." More explosions rocked the station. Through the viewport, June could see Dominion boarding ships detaching from the main fleet, their hulls bristling with weapons and armor. Soon they would cut through the station's outer hull and begin hunting for prisoners. The classroom was almost empty now, with only a few students still struggling to reach the door. Professor Veltar was trying to maintain order, but his blue skin had gone pale with fear. He clearly had no idea what to do in a real emergency. June made a decision that surprised even himself. Instead of following the crowd toward the escape pods, he walked in the opposite direction, toward the maintenance access panel near the back of the classroom. "Where are you going?" Nala asked, following him. "Somewhere they will not expect," June replied, pulling the panel open with hands that were steadier than he felt. "If we cannot escape, then we need to find another way to survive." He looked back at the chaos in the classroom one more time, then crawled into the maintenance tunnel. Behind him, he could hear Nala's wings folding as she followed. Whatever happened next, he was not going to die running toward an obvious trap. For the first time since arriving at the academy, June felt something other than embarrassment about being human. He felt determined. The maintenance tunnel was darker than June had expected. Emergency lighting cast red shadows on the metal walls as he crawled forward on his hands and knees. Behind him, Nala's wings scraped against the tunnel walls as she struggled to keep up. "This is madness," she buzzed quietly. "We should be with the others in the escape pods." June paused and looked back at her. "Do you hear any escape pods launching?" They both listened. The station shook with more weapons fire, but there was no sound of pods ejecting from their bays. Nala's compound eyes dimmed as she realized what this meant. "They have already blocked the escape routes," she whispered. "Exactly." June continued crawling forward. "So we find another way." The tunnel led deeper into the station's core, past pipes that carried water and air to the different sections. June had studied these blueprints during his first month at the academy, trying to understand how such a massive structure could function in space. Now that knowledge might save their lives. He reached a junction where several tunnels met. Through a grate in the floor, he could see into one of the main corridors. Dominion soldiers were already inside the station, their black armor making them look like walking nightmares. They moved in perfect formation, checking each room methodically. One of the soldiers stopped directly below their hiding spot. His armor was different from the others, with silver markings that probably meant he was an officer. He spoke into a communication device built into his helmet. "Sector 7 is clear. No sign of the humans yet. Command wants them taken alive." June felt ice in his stomach. They were looking for humans specifically. But why, There were only 12 human students in the entire academy, scattered across different programs. What made them so important to the Dominion? The officer moved on, and June led Nala deeper into the maintenance system. They crawled for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Finally, they reached a larger space where the main power conduits ran through the station's core. June had never seen anything like it. Thick cables carried energy between massive distribution nodes, each one humming with enough power to run a small city. The air smelled of ozone and hot metal. Warning, signs in dozens of languages covered every surface. "We should not be here," Nala said, her wings trembling. "One wrong move and we could be electrocuted." But June was already studying the system with growing excitement. His human brain, evolved for pattern recognition and tool use, began to see possibilities that a more specialized alien mind might miss. "Look at this," he said, pointing to a control panel. "The power distribution is automatic, but there are manual overrides. If we redirect power from non-essential systems, we could boost the shields or weapons." "You do not know how to operate Centaurian technology," Nala protested. June grinned. "Technology is technology. The basic principles are the same everywhere." He began working on the control panel, his human fingers surprisingly well suited for the delicate work. Within minutes, he had figured out the basic interface. It was actually simpler than some of the Earth computers he had used back home. The station shuddered again as more weapons fire hit the shields. June could see the power levels dropping on his display. At this rate, the shields would fail within the hour. He started rerouting power from the dormitory sections, the cafeterias, and other areas that were not critical for survival. Slowly, the shield strength began to increase. It was not much, but it might buy them more time. "Incredible," Nala buzzed. "How did you learn to do that so quickly?" "I did not learn it," June said, still working. "I figured it out. Humans are good at that." A new voice echoed through the power chamber. Well, what do we have here?" June spun around to see another human standing at the entrance to the chamber. She was older than him, maybe 25, with short black hair and the confident bearing of someone used to command. Her academy uniform had military insignia that marked her as a senior student in the tactical program. "Captain Yura," Nala said with relief. "We thought everyone had been captured." "Not everyone," Yura replied, walking over to examine June's work. "Some of us were smart enough to avoid the obvious traps. Nice work on the power distribution, kid. Where did you learn engineering?" "I did not," June said. "I just started pressing buttons until something worked." Yura stared at him for a moment, then laughed. "Typical human approach. If you cannot understand it, break it until it does what you want." She looked at the control panel more carefully. "But this is actually quite sophisticated. You have managed to increase shield strength by 12% without overloading any of the primary systems. Is that good?" June asked. "It is impressive," Yura said. "Most trained engineers would need hours to do what you did in minutes." Another explosion rocked the station, stronger than before. Through the chamber's small viewport, they could see one of the nearby space stations breaking apart under Dominion fire. Debris scattered like deadly confetti against the stars. "We need to access the main computer," Yura said grimly. "I want to know why the Dominion is so interested in capturing humans alive." June led them through more maintenance tunnels to the station's computer core. The room was filled with crystalline storage units that hummed with data processing. A single terminal provided access to the entire system. Yura's fingers flew over the controls as she searched through the station's records. Her face grew more worried with each file she opened. "This is bad," she muttered. "Very bad." "What did you find?" Nala asked. "The Dominion has been studying Earth for months," Yura explained. "They have detailed files on human biology, psychology, and culture, but more importantly, they have been tracking every human in the exchange program." She pulled up a star map showing the locations of all human students across the galaxy. Red markers indicated where Dominion forces were currently attacking. "They are not just hitting the station," Yura continued. "They are conducting simultaneous raids on every major educational facility that has human students. They want all of us." "But why?" June asked. We are just students. We do not know any military secrets. Yura accessed another file and her face went pale. Because we are not just students, we are specimens. The Dominion has discovered something about human biology that makes us valuable to them. The file contained detailed analysis of human genetic material, brain scans, and psychological profiles. But the most disturbing part was at the end, a section labeled Weapons Development Applications. They want to study us, Yura said quietly, to understand how humans think and adapt so quickly. They believe our flexibility and unpredictability could be weaponized. Nala's wings began beating rapidly in distress. They want to turn human thinking into a weapon? Worse, Yura replied. They want to understand human weaknesses so they can develop biological weapons specifically designed to kill our species. Earth has 4 billion people. If the Dominion can create a plague that only affects humans, she did not need to finish the sentence. They all understood the implications. The station's communication system crackled to life with a Dominion transmission. Attention Academy personnel. Surrender the human students immediately and no harm will come to the other species. You have 10 minutes to comply. June looked at Yura, then at Nala. For the first time since the attack began, he felt truly afraid. Not just for himself, but for everyone back on Earth who had no idea what was coming. What do we do now? He asked. Yura's expression hardened with determination. Now we fight back. The first Dominion soldier came around the corner like a shadow made of metal and death. His black armor reflected the emergency lighting as he raised his weapon toward June and the others. Time seemed to slow down as June watched the alien warriors, finger tighten on the trigger. Then Yura moved. The older human woman grabbed a piece of broken pipe from the floor and swung it like a club. The metal connected with the soldier's helmet with a sound like thunder. The Dominion warrior stumbled, backward, more surprised than hurt. "Run!" Yura shouted. They scattered down different corridors. June found himself running alongside Crix, the reptilian student who had mocked him in class just hours earlier. The Saurian's powerful legs carried him faster than any human could move, but he kept looking back to make sure June was still following. "This way," Crix hissed, leading them into what looked like a storage room. "I know hiding place." Behind stacked boxes of laboratory equipment, they crouched in the darkness. June could hear his heart beating so loudly he was sure the Dominion soldiers would find them just from the sound. "Human," Crix whispered. "Why did your captain attack armed soldier with piece of metal pipe?" June thought about it. Because she saw a threat and reacted. Humans do that. But soldier had energy weapon. Pipe is just metal. "Sometimes metal is enough," June replied. "My people have been fighting with simple tools for thousands of years. We learned to use whatever we could find." Crix's reptilian eyes studied June in the dim light. "Your species is strange. Most beings run from superior force. You attack it." Heavy footsteps echoed in the corridor outside their hiding place. The Dominion soldiers were conducting a room-by-room search, getting closer with each passing minute. June looked around the storage room and noticed something interesting. The boxes contained scientific equipment from dozens of different worlds, each designed for species with different physical capabilities. But humans had something most aliens did not: hands that could adapt to almost any tool. He quietly opened one of the boxes and found what looked like a Centaurian research scanner. It was designed for Professor Veltar's 4-fingered hands, but June's human fingers were flexible enough to operate it anyway. The scanner's display showed energy signatures throughout the station. June could see the Dominion soldiers as bright red dots moving through the corridors. But more importantly, he could see something else. The soldiers' weapons had a specific energy pattern that the scanner could track. "Crix," he whispered, "can you see in the dark better than I can?" The reptilian nodded. "Saurian eyes are designed for low-light hunting." "Good. I have an idea." June explained his plan quickly. It was desperate and probably stupid, but it might work. Crix listened with growing amazement. "You want to take their weapons?" the Saurian asked. "How?" "By being human," June replied. They waited until a single soldier passed by their hiding spot. Then June put his plan into action. Using the scanner, he tracked the soldiers' movement pattern. Most aliens were predictable in their behavior, following logical paths and standard procedures. Humans were different. They could be random, when they needed to be. June crawled out of the storage room and began making noise in the opposite direction from where Crix was hiding. When the soldier came to investigate, the Saurian attacked from behind with his natural claws, temporarily disabling the warrior's armor systems. June grabbed the fallen energy weapon. It was heavier than he expected and clearly designed for hands, larger than his, but humans had spent millennia adapting tools to fit their needs. Within seconds, he figured out the basic firing mechanism. "Incredible," Crix whispered. "How did you learn to use Dominion weapons so quickly?" "It is just a tool," June said. "Point and shoot. The rest is details." They moved through the station more confidently now, using the scanner to avoid large groups of soldiers while picking off isolated enemies. Each victory gave them more weapons and equipment. In one encounter, they found Nala trapped in a laboratory with 3 other students. One of them, a crystalline being named Dex, had been wounded by enemy fire. The injury looked serious, with cracks spreading through his silicon-based body structure. Most of the students were in panic, unsure how to help someone whose biology was completely different from their own. But June knelt beside the wounded alien and began examining the damage. "I do not know your anatomy," he told Dex, "but I understand basic principles of structural repair." Using medical supplies from the laboratory, June began treating the cracks in Dex's crystalline form like stress fractures in any other material. He applied stabilizing compounds and created temporary supports, drawing on everything from Earth, geology to basic engineering principles. "How do you know how to heal me?" Dex asked, his voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "I did not know," June admitted. "I just tried things until something worked. Humans are good at making connections between different types of knowledge." Nala watched the treatment with fascination. "On my world, only trained medical specialists would attempt to treat another species. The risk of making mistakes is too high." "Humans make mistakes all the time," June said, helping Dex to his feet. "But we also learn from them quickly." Their growing group moved through the station like a small army. June found himself naturally taking a leadership role, not because he was the strongest or smartest, but because he could see connections that others missed. When they encountered a locked security door, other species tried to break through using brute force or advanced technical knowledge. June looked at the problem differently. He found the maintenance access panel and simply rewired the door's power supply. "Why did that work?" asked Min, a graceful humanoid with blue skin who had joined their group. "Because I did not try to hack the security system," June explained. "I just gave the door different instructions about what security meant." As they reached the central hub of the station, they could hear fighting in the distance. Other groups of students were making their own stands against the Dominion forces. But something was different about the sounds of battle. "Listen." Yura's voice came through a communication device they had taken from a captured soldier. "The aliens are fighting differently now, more aggressively, more unpredictably." June realized what was happening. The alien students were learning from human tactics. They were becoming more flexible, more willing to take risks and try unconventional approaches. "We are teaching them," he said to Crix. "They are learning to think like humans." The reptilian warrior nodded grimly. "Perhaps that is what the Dominion fears most. Not human strength or technology, but human thinking spreading to other species." Through the station's windows, they could see more Dominion ships arriving. But now there were also other vessels approaching from different directions. The distress signal June had sent earlier was bringing help from across the galaxy. The final battle was about to begin. Commander Thane stood in the Dominion Command Center, watching the tactical displays with growing frustration. His massive frame towered over the other officers, his thick fur dark with anger. The operation should have been simple. Capture the human students and secure the biological samples from the research labs. Instead, his forces were being systematically outmaneuvered by a group of academy students. "Report," he growled at his communications officer. Sir, we have lost contact with 12 squads in the past hour. The remaining units report coordinated attacks using our own weapons against us. The resistance is being led by human students, who have somehow organized the other species into effective fighting units. Thane's claws scraped against the metal console. In 30 years of conquest, he had never encountered anything like this. Most species either surrendered quickly or fought in predictable patterns based on their evolutionary instincts. Hive minds moved as one unit. Solitary predators fought alone. Pack hunters like his own people attacked in rigid formation. But humans were different. They fought like pack hunters but thought like individuals. They could coordinate without losing creativity. They could adapt their tactics in real time based on changing situations. How many humans are leading this resistance, he asked. Our best estimate is 3, sir, but they have convinced over 40 alien students to follow them. Thane slammed, his fist on the console. 3 humans had turned a routine capture operation into a full-scale battle. Worse, they were teaching other species to fight like humans. Meanwhile, in the station's central hub, June crouched behind an overturned table with his growing team of alien allies. The past hour had transformed him from a nervous exchange student into something he never expected to become, a war leader. Crix, what do you see? He asked the Saurian, who was using his enhanced senses to scout the next corridor. 6 soldiers. Standard formation, Crix hissed. But they are expecting us to attack from the front like last time. June smiled. Then we do not attack from the front. He turned to address the group that had gathered around him. There was Nala with her flight capability, Min with her incredible speed, Dex whose crystalline body could refract light to create confusion, and 8 other students from 6 different species. Listen carefully, June said. We are going to do something they will not expect. Instead of one coordinated attack, we are going to create chaos. He began assigning roles to each team member, not based on military doctrine, but on their individual strengths and personalities. Nala would create a distraction from above. Min would use her speed to confuse the enemy's targeting systems. Dex would bend light to make their numbers appear larger than they actually were. But this plan has no structure, protested Len, a logical Centaurian student. How can we coordinate without clear command hierarchy? We improvise, June replied. Each of you knows your job. When the moment comes, you will know what to do. The alien students looked at each other uncertainly. This went against everything they had learned about tactics and teamwork. Most galactic species had evolved rigid, social structures with clear leadership chains. But as they moved into position, something remarkable happened. Each alien began to think like June had taught them, seeing opportunities instead of just following orders. When Nala's distraction worked better than expected, Min extended her speed run to hit 2 additional targets. When Dex's light refraction created an opening, Len abandoned his assigned position to take advantage of it. The Dominion soldiers found themselves facing not a predictable assault, but a fluid, ever-changing attack that adapted to their responses in real time. Within minutes, the corridor was secured with minimal casualties. How did you know that would work? Crix asked as they regrouped. I did not know, June admitted. I just trusted you to figure it out. That was the key difference between human leadership and what most species practiced. Humans did not just give orders, they taught others to think for themselves. As they moved deeper into the station, word of their success spread among the other student groups. Alien species that had been hiding or surrendering began fighting back with newfound confidence. The resistance was growing stronger with each victory. In the research laboratories, they discovered the full scope of the Dominion's plan. Computer files showed detailed studies of human DNA, brain patterns, and psychological profiles. But the most disturbing discovery was in the weapons development section. They are not just studying us, Yura said grimly, reading from a classified document. They are trying to recreate human unpredictability in artificial intelligence systems. The files showed prototype battle computers designed to think like humans, capable of adapting tactics without pre-programming. If the Dominion succeeded, they would have armies that could learn and change strategy as quickly as human commanders. This is why they need live specimens, June realized. They cannot copy what they do not understand. A new alarm began sounding throughout the station. Through the laboratory windows, they could see human fleet vessels emerging from hyperspace. Earth's military had received their distress signal and was mounting a rescue operation. But the approaching ships also triggered the final phase of the Dominion attack. Commander Thane's forces began moving toward the central hub where June's group was located. This time, they were not trying to capture prisoners. They were coming to eliminate the threat. All units converge on the research section. Thane's voice echoed through the station's communication system. Kill the humans. We have what we need from the others. June looked around at the alien students who had followed him this far. They had learned to fight like humans, but now they faced the ultimate test. Could they maintain their courage when facing overwhelming odds? "What are your orders?" Crix asked, checking his captured weapon. June thought about all the human history. He had studied all the times his species had faced impossible situations and somehow found a way to survive. Humans had one advantage that no other species seemed to possess. They could find hope even in hopeless situations. "We hold this position," he said firmly, "and we trust that help is coming." Around him, 30 alien students who had learned to think like humans prepared for their final battle. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and fighting an enemy with superior technology. But they had something the Dominion did not expect: the human refusal to give up, now shared across multiple species. Commander, Thane was about to learn why humans had spread so quickly across the galaxy, despite being the newest species to reach the stars. The final battle began with an explosion that shook the entire space station. Commander Thane's forces had stopped trying to be careful. They blasted through walls and bulkheads, advancing toward the research section where June and his allies had made their last stand. June crouched behind an overturned laboratory table, watching the tactical display on a salvaged Dominion scanner. Red dots representing enemy soldiers were converging from 3 different directions. In 15 minutes, they would be completely surrounded. "How many?" Yura asked, checking her captured energy rifle. "Too many," June replied honestly. "But that does not mean we cannot win." Around them, 30 alien students prepared for what might be their final fight. But something had changed in their faces over the past few hours. The fear was still there, but it was mixed with something else: determination. They had learned to think like humans. Crix flexed his claws and tested his weapon's power setting. "What is the plan, human leader?" June looked around at his diverse team: Saurians with their natural hunting instincts, Vespians who could fly, Centaurians with their logical minds, crystalline beings who could manipulate light, a dozen other species, each with unique abilities. "The plan is simple," he said. "We do not fight like any species they have ever encountered before. We fight like all of them." The first wave of Dominion soldiers came through the main entrance, expecting to face a traditional defensive position. Instead, they found chaos. Nala and 3 other flying students attacked from above, dropping improvised explosives made from laboratory chemicals. Crix led the Saurians in a flanking attack that used their natural camouflage abilities. The Centaurians provided covering fire with mathematical precision, while the crystalline students created optical illusions that made the defenders appear to be in multiple places at once. But at the center of it all was something the Dominion had never faced: human tactical thinking applied by non-human minds. Each alien student fought not just with their natural abilities, but with the flexibility and adaptability they had learned from June. When their initial attacks failed, they immediately tried new approaches. When the enemy adapted to their tactics, they changed again. Commander Thane watched the battle through his tactical displays and felt something he had not experienced in decades: uncertainty. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "our forces are taking heavy casualties. The resistance is using tactics we have never encountered before." Thane studied the battle data. The enemy was fighting like a dozen different species all at once, combining abilities in ways that should not have been possible. More disturbing, they were adapting their strategy faster than his computers could track. "This is what happens when humans teach others to think like them," he growled. We must stop this before it spreads further. He made a decision that would haunt him forever. Abandoning his command post, Thane headed for the battle personally. If human thinking was the problem, then he would eliminate the source. The fighting had moved into the station's central hub, a vast open space surrounded by multiple levels of walkways and platforms. June found himself separated from most of his team, pinned down behind a maintenance console as Dominion soldiers advanced from two directions. His captured weapon was running low on power. His human body was exhausted from hours of combat. By every logical measure, he should surrender or retreat. Instead, he did something completely illogical. He stood up and walked toward the enemy. "Human!" Crick shouted from across the hub. "What are you doing?" June did not answer. He was focused entirely on the massive figure of Commander Thane, who had just entered the battle wearing full combat armor. The Dominion leader was twice June's size and armed with weapons that could level a building. But June had something Thane did not understand: the human ability to find hope in hopeless situations. "You are the one," Thane rumbled as they faced, each other in the center of the hub. "The one who has corrupted these species with your chaotic thinking." "I did not corrupt anyone," June replied calmly. "I just showed them that there is more than one way to solve a problem." Thane raised his massive weapon. "Your species is a disease that spreads disorder throughout the galaxy. It ends here." The shot that rang out echoed through the entire hub. But it was not Thane who fired. Captain Yura stood on an upper walkway, her rifle aimed at the Dominion commander. Her shot had damaged his armor's power systems, leveling the playing field. "Human pack tactics," she called down to June. "We never fight alone." What followed was not really a fair fight. Thane was larger, stronger, and more experienced in combat, but June fought like a human, which meant he fought dirty. He used the environment around him, turning maintenance equipment into weapons and obstacles. He attacked from unexpected angles and retreated when logic said he should advance. Most importantly, he refused to give up even when Thane knocked him down repeatedly. "Why do you not stay down?" Thane roared after June got up from what should have been a finishing blow. "Because I am human," June said, wiping blood from his mouth. "We do not know how to quit." The final moment came when Thane, exhausted from chasing an opponent who would not behave logically, made a mistake. He overextended himself in an attack that should have ended the fight. June rolled aside and grabbed a piece of broken equipment. It was just a metal rod, nothing special. But in human hands, any tool could become a weapon. The improvised club connected with Thane's damaged armor at exactly the right spot. The commander's power systems failed completely, and the massive alien crashed to the deck, unconscious. Silence fell over the hub. Then slowly, cheering began to spread among the alien students. They had won. But the real victory came later, as human fleet ships docked with the station and rescue teams poured inside. The first officer to reach June was Admiral Kim, the head of Earth's military exchange program. "Report, Student Lee," she said formally. June looked around at the 30 alien students who had followed him through the battle. They were battered and exhausted, but their eyes shone with something new: confidence. "Mission accomplished, sir," he said. "The exchange program is working exactly as planned." Admiral Kim smiled. "What exchange program?" Only then did June understand the truth. Earth's cultural exchange program had never been about education. It had been about quietly placing humans throughout galactic civilization, teaching other species to think with human flexibility and adaptability. "We are not just students," he realized. "We are teachers." "Welcome to the real mission," Admiral Kim said. "Earth's greatest export is not technology or resources. It is the human way of thinking. And thanks to you and others like you, that thinking is now spreading to every corner of the galaxy." Through the station's windows, June could see the stars, stretching endlessly in all directions. Somewhere out there, other human exchange students were teaching alien species that there was always another way, always another solution, always reason to hope. The galaxy would never be the same.